Alrighty. Well, good luck. And let me know if you need anything throughout.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Scott Helfrich. I'm Associate Director with Residential Life at Columbia University. So we're kicking off at 1 o'clock, but we realize that folks might be coming in a little bit later. So Haley and Haley will do her introductions. We're going to continue to admit people. But this meeting, it's a little bit different than a webinar in the sense of we're not presenting so much. There's not slides that we're going to be going through. We're going to be offering our perspectives, and you're going to have an opportunity to ask some questions that you'll send to me. And then I'll be collating, looking for patterns and themes in those. So again, this is really life on campus. And I think that's really important to keep considerations that there's life during what has been COVID and the pandemic, and then there's student life prior to the pandemic. And we're hoping that we're all going to go back prior to the pandemic on that. If you want to keep your cameras open, feel free. It's not a requirement, but it does help kind of see other people that you might be coming into Columbia with. That's one thing to keep in mind. Microphones should be off for that piece. We are recording at this particular time, and this is for all students and family who can't attend this session. If you need closed captioning, I would put that on there. It's on the bottom as an opportunity. We are going to be recording this session, and I'm going to put on the closed caption for me. And so that will be up there with that. Again, my name is Sky Helfrich. I use he, him, his. I am an associate director day-to-day at Columbia, working with Columbia College and School of Engineering students in the residence halls. I work with what is termed to be Southfield. And so that is where all of the first year students live. So that would be Carmen, John Jay, Hartley, Wallach, and Fernald. And I've been here since 2005. So kind of that longer, richer history, certainly comment perspectives on. And so with that, I'm going to toss that over to Haley.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Haley Carson, and my pronouns are she, her. I am the Assistant Director of Special Interest Communities, which is primarily upper class students. However, prior to that, I was the Residence Hall Director of John Jay Hall for 3 years. So Southfield, the first year area, is near and dear to my heart. I have been here a little bit over 3 years now, and I think that's it. I work for undergraduate student life and residential life.
Thanks, Haley. William?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is William. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I'm a rising junior in Columbia College studying financial economics and music. I've been an RA, a resident advisor, since the beginning of my sophomore year, all the way up until now. And as of now, I've worked as a resident advisor in John Jay and Carmen, both of which are freshman residence halls. Living here on campus now during COVID has certainly been different, not just as an RA, but also as a student, and definitely looking forward to heading back in the fall.
Thank you, William.
Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a rising senior in Columbia College studying psychology. Currently, I'm the interim director of the Residence Hall Leadership Organization, or ROLO, as you might hear it referred to as, which is an organization that works to advocate for the needs of students living in the residence halls. And as first years, you're a big part of our work. And I also serve as the president of the Coalition Against Sexual Violence. And since freshman year, I've been really involved in more research work in that area as well. And I'm really excited to hear more from you and get back into the swing of things in the fall.
And I'm John Kamissis. I'm a faculty member in electrical engineering. He, him, his pronouns. And I've been at Columbia since 2006. And so I'm in the engineering school, but I've been faculty in residence for some time. So I have a lot of interaction with student life programs. And also I am the director of the Makerspace. So also happy to answer questions about that and discuss that a bit more.
Great, thank you, John. So one of the questions that I think would be really good for us to get into for the panelists here is to reflect on what campus culture, what campus experience has been for students and what we've heard in COVID, but more importantly, what is campus life like prior to the pandemic? You know, and Catherine and William, really thinking back, like what makes you excited for getting back to that, right? And so for the panelists, feel free to jump in and share your perspectives and we'll dialogue. And then once we go through that, we'll explain what the rest of the time is going to look like for folks. Catherine, what do you think?
So there's a lot of things that are different pre-COVID and our current COVID situation. So I don't think I can capture it all, but I would say that one of the big differences is that on campus, there's a really big sense of communal energy and a communal attitude that a lot of Columbia students bring to campus in anything from studying to social scene. There's a lot of energy and excitement that comes from being on a campus in the city. And I think a lot of Columbia students really resonate with that and take a lot of their, a lot of the energy from the city and bring it into their undergraduate experience. So I would say that the communal aspects of learning is something that's different in the COVID world that I'm hoping that all of you will get to experience when you come in the fall. And also all of the social aspects of life on campus is something that hopefully we can bring back as well. But William, would love to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, for sure. I largely agree with what you said. I mean, so many things are different now. I mean, with this past year being virtual and all, whether it be the lack of like in-person classes or just in-person experiences, I think it's something that I think we should all look forward to. And yeah, I think just the lack of people on campus now. I mean, so many people have left and it just kind of created a void. I think that with this coming year and this coming semester, I think it's definitely something to look forward to.
Haley, you've been, living in the residence halls and on campus. And I want to say for the group that we bring a certain expertise with the residence halls. 98% of our students live on for all 4 years. So when we refer to that piece, I think we have a really good pulse of where things have been. But Haley, I'm curious if you have some insight from you, and then John, if you wouldn't mind supporting next after Haley on your thoughts.
Totally, yeah. So this past year, John Jay was open. And we had not a full building, but nearly a full building. I think what I've learned about our students is that the students were really making the most of what they had and what they could do. So, we know that there couldn't be large gatherings inside, right? So we made sure to have things outside, like grab and go events with food and whatever that may be. And I think what I really admired about our students living in John Jay, at least, is that they really took what they could and took the opportunities they had to get to know people outside of a virtual setting while still remaining relatively safe, which is impressive, I would say. But yeah, I would say it's been quiet. We're definitely missing students on campus. It's not the same to not have our dining halls crowded and our lounges full of students studying and eating. We're definitely missing you all. So I hope you're excited to come in the fall for the first time.
So one of the things I'll say, and riffing a little bit on Haley's comment about the having events outside, is one of the great things about Columbia's structure with Southfield is that all of the dorms face the quad and the central campus. So what I will say is the summer's been a little quieter, although actually a surprising number of students are around for summer A and even summer B. But especially in the spring, the campus is actually a lot more fun because everybody's outside and, there was a lot more energy there. And I hope that continues into the fall, even though you'll be allowed to be inside with a much higher density. But, a lot of folks would grab food from John Jay, go outside, and there were tents to also, especially when it rained, it was like, I think I won't say the most fun, but it kind of put people together without having like that extraordinary density, and it just gave it a new and different kind of life, which I actually hope continues in a lot of ways.
Thank you all. My perspective that I would share is I miss seeing students in the dining halls. So we're hoping that we'll be back, not just doing grab and go, right? If anyone's reading the university releases, we expect to be at that point. Students gathering in larger quantities in talkative study spaces. So Hartley and Wallach have these 10th floor lounges where you would see groups of 15, 20 students studying for the core classes and things like that. The student performances on any given weekend, Friday, Saturday, Thursdays, you could see multiple student performances happening in Learner. You could pop in and you would see impromptu a cappella or acoustic groups or jazz musicians playing in Learner Hall. The campus, for those who have been and those that haven't, it's called College Walk. It's at 116th Street that goes between Broadway and Amsterdam. That is being redone. But there's a sundial there, and seeing students perform out on Low Plaza in that area, seeing students just hang out, kick a soccer ball, throw a frisbee, read, take lunch out there. That is much more of our campus we call Low Steps. So that goes from the 116th Street between Broadway and Amsterdam up to Low Library. There's a set of steps there. And so we refer to that as kind of the urban beach. And in the fall and spring, when the weather's nice, that is just absolutely packed. That's something that's been missing. We had a little bit more of that in the spring, but not what I would say those of us who have been around have enjoyed in that way. So we expect that to be coming back in that capacity. And so also Hamilton is right there on the South Field. Again, that's where all the first year students live. That building's open and those classes would be used by students to gather at night and study. And so that's something those study groups have been a little bit gone away with. And in study groups, it's not 100% studying, right? It's people hanging out with friends in different spaces. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of cover 4 buckets. And so when the 6 of us were meeting that are doing this panel, we really came down to questions around NSOP in the first 6 weeks, life in the residence halls, how do you get involved on campus? And then something that we feel is really important is how do you tackle that stress culture that is rumored to exist at Columbia, but also coming out of COVID, right? Things have been different. There's been an elevated stress and mental health piece. How do we start to tackle that as a community and look at that? And so those are kind of the 4 buckets. What I'd love to do is start with kind of the first, which would be the NSOP and first week of classes. And so for those who are sitting here, I'd love you to take a minute and message me what question you have. And you can message me personally. And again, my name is Scott Helfrich. I'm listed as the host. If you forget, Haley's also the co-host. But what we're going to do is we're going to look at those questions. And the reason I'm having you send it to me is if we did an open live Q&A where your picture came up, right? We'd have to stop the recording. But this way you can send the questions to me. They're kind of made a little bit more anonymous. We can look for buckets that are happening, and we can keep the recording going for those individuals who can attend this. So that is an intentional thought out piece. So take a minute and type a question or speak a question into the chat feature and send that to me directly. And again, the first bucket is new student orientation, what we term to be NSOP, so NSOP, in the first week of classes. All right, one question that is come in is it realistic to find my forever friends? So those would be your friends that are gonna be there for all 4 years during new student orientation in the first week of classes. And what if I don't? William, would you be willing to kind of share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's certainly possible to meet your forever friends, whether that be during NSOP, the new student orientation program that we have here at Columbia, or during your first week of classes. I know plenty of other people around me have done so. That being said, I personally didn't. I personally didn't meet my close friends during NSOP. I met a bunch after settling into my dorm, into my room, speaking with people on my floor, whether that be through resident advisor held events, events held by our hall council, or just some chance encounters. Other places I met some people were through some of the clubs I did, some of the classes I took. But yeah, long story short, it's totally fine if you don't meet your forever friends at the beginning of the year. You'll end up meeting so many wonderful people during your time here at Columbia. So yeah, just give it time.
Catherine, how about for you? Anything that you'd recommend or suggest for people to get comfortable and kind of meet new friends, or for those who might be trying to figure out and find their way during that NSOP period?
Yeah, I mean, I first want to validate that anxiety, because I think, being nervous about making new friends and meeting new people is something a lot of us felt when we came to campus, especially if you're coming from further away. But I do believe that individuals who are nervous about that and nervous about putting yourself out there and meeting new people can absolutely find their place here and can find that they're a group of people that really validates and supports them. I would say one thing that I found was really useful was always be open to meeting someone in a place that maybe it wouldn't occur to you that you could find an interesting friend. An example is I was one of those kids that did the swim test my first week of NSOP, and I met one of my really good friends who I still know now at the swim test, as nerdy as that sounds. But keeping an open mind and being willing to connect with people in spaces that aren't normally designed for social connection is a great way to meet amazing people that will be there for you for your time at Columbia. So that's what I would add.
I will also add in here, I think what's really important, something that Catherine just mentioned, is really being open to new experiences. Something I think about is like the student organization fair that we have in the fall. Really put your name on info lists if you are remotely interested at all. It's a great way to just dip your foot in the water and get to know different organizations. And even if you only go to one info meeting, you might meet your close friend there. So just keeping an open mind is going to be critical, and finding your friends. I know many moons ago in college, that's exactly what I did. And that's how I made the majority of my friends, because it was not planned.
Thank you all. So there's some great questions coming in, and I'm trying to think of ways to bucket this. One that came in is considering that there'll be several, a number of first year students, also sophomores, coming back on Wednesday of new student orientation programs. Is communication, is that centralized? Will that be sent out to students? And kind of how should they expect programming for the entire class, or expect to socialize in smaller groups during orientation? I'm happy to take this question on. So communication, in the past we've used guidebooks. You get the orientation schedule, and that should be coming out in the next 2 weeks. Within that, you're going to know what's required and what the socialization opportunities are. So for instance, there's a RA night out. RA stands for resident advisor. And so the resident advisors go out on the floor. There'll be late night programming that's done by the Residence Hall Leadership Organization. And those are, anywhere from 11 to 1 in the morning, 10 to 12, but they're opportunities. There's also some rejuvenation stations for those who might be a little bit tired, jet lagged, not wanting to go out in different groups on the floor, or go out to larger events that they can stop by and socialize in smaller pieces. I think where you're going to expect to socialize, and others have highlighted this, but it bears repeating, is in small groups on your floor, your new student orientation group. You're going to meet people in dining, athletic teams, in discussions in various formats, sitting and waiting to talk with your advisor. So use those opportunities to be bold and just introduce yourself, ask for somebody's uni, send them a message. I think those are some ways that you'll learn about programming, going to programming during the week. And there is a lot to socialize with. And so I think it's balancing that against being self-care and not getting too stressed out during that first week. And for panelists, they'll jump in and kind of compliment or not if they have a different perspective on that.
I just want to add something really quickly. Catherine, I think you should talk a little bit about the Residence Hall Leadership Organization. So for those who do not know, you will know, ROLO, or Residence Hall Leadership Organization, hosts late night events each night, as Scott mentioned. So you will see Catherine there each night. So Catherine, if you just kind of want to talk about how we have events catered to our first years and our sophomores and joint, and what that's going to look like.
Yeah, so obviously it seems like we're still trying to get out the information about what NSOP is going to be like for the different classes, and hopefully you all will have a better sense of what that'll look like in the coming weeks. But what I can tell you is that NSOP tends to be really full during the day, and we in the Residence Hall Leadership Organization want to provide a space for students to kind of casually meet each other in events that are held in the evenings on campus after all of the general NSOP programming is over. So maybe a little bit about the Residence Hall Leadership Organization. We essentially are an organization that represents the needs of students who live in Columbia housing. And we are advocating for their needs on the administrative level, which can involve developing initiatives to improve the lives of students on campus. But it also can involve developing events that are focused on community building and helping students meet their forever friends on campus. And one of our big things is the events that we hold in the evenings during NSOP. And these events, given the unique split of years during NSOP this year, we will have events catered to first years and events catered to sophomores, and then events that both class years can attend and meet each other. And the thing about these events is that there's everyone is welcome. No sign up is necessary. You just show up. An example of the types of things that we're going to have is a trivia night. If you know things and want to share, please come do that. We will also be having an open mic night. If you have talents and want to share, you want to cheer on your new NSOP friends, we would love to see you there. And then we'll have like a more casual, subtle game night as well for all of you to show off your amazing skills in that too. But Haley, if you want to add to that, feel free.
That was great. Thank you, Catherine.
Great, thank you. So there's a couple other pieces that are coming in around NSOP that I think are important. One of them, John, might be really up to you, but during NSOP and that first week of school, are students able to, and should they visit professors during orientation?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that Columbia did to make the beginning of the semester a little more relaxed is actually the first day of class is surprisingly late. And so, definitely reach out to faculty, because there's, normally we expect class to start Tuesday or Wednesday after Labor Day, but it doesn't start till Thursday. So in my case, like I don't have to teach until the week after, which is great because it leaves a lot of space open for meetings with students, advising, et cetera. So absolutely feel free to reach out to faculty if you're not yet assigned a student advisor, which you normally won't be. There's a whole system of departmental advising. But again, if you're thinking of doing research, if you just have questions, reach out to the faculty that are in the program programs that you're considering. And it's a great time to have those meetings before you get busy and they get busy with classes and other distractions. And not to harp on this too much, because you'll hear me say it 1,000 times. It is totally realistic for first year students to get involved in research projects and things like that. But it does take beating the bushes to find faculty that are willing to host you. And so starting those conversations early is a great way to go.
One of the questions that's come up here, and Catherine and William, this might be great for you. What happens, and do you recommend to students that if they're trying to join a class or sign up for a class and that class is full, what recommendations do you have?
Sure, I can take this one, I think, and feel free to add on. I think when I first signed up for classes in freshman year, I wanted to sign up for Principles of Economics with Gulati, which is one of the classes that a lot of freshmen always sign up for. The class is always overbooked, like double, triple. And I was not initially let into class. I was definitely on the wait list. I think the class size was like 250 and I was 240 something on the wait list. But that being said, I stay, just ride the wait list out and you'll get into class. I think with these types of things, professors know that there's always high demand for a lot of classes, and I think just generally riding the wait list out and just being patient. Generally, you can get all the classes that you want.
Yeah, I have something to add to that as well. It really does depend on the size of the class. For the odds that you'll get in for, a 200-person class like William was talking about, the odds of turnover and a lot of students dropping is much higher, and you'll have a much higher chance of getting in, even if you're far down on the wait list. For something like a seminar, which may have like 12 to 20 students, it might be a bit more challenging to get a spot on that wait list, even if you're number 2 on that wait list. Another thing I would say is, even if you're not registered and even if you're not even on the wait list, go on the first day of class, especially if this is a class that you're really passionate about. Professors recognize that wait lists are a huge thing at Columbia. There's a lot of turnover during the shopping period. A lot of students drop and a lot of students add different classes. Things shift a lot and professors expect that. And so typically on the first day of class, they'll make announcements about how to get into the class if you're there on the first day. And a big piece of that is attending on the first day. So if you go on the first day and the professor says, okay, we have a wait list of 50 people, here's what you need to do to get into the class. Typically that'll involve sending an email to the professor and explaining why you want to be in that class, what skills you have, what you need that class for, if it's for a requirement or if it's just an interest that you have, and other experiences that might be relevant. But as William said, typically you can get into classes that you want, with the caveat that they tend to be a little bit on the larger side.
Great, thank you. So there's a lot of questions coming in, and I want to recognize this. There are questions around COVID and the potential impact on new student orientation, the impact on the first week of classes. Questions that are: is there a chance of Columbia going 100% online again? Is there what COVID campus compact, as we call it? What restrictions will be in place in the residence halls? And so I think it's really important that, as we all have heard, over and over the past 18 months, that things are fluid. Do we expect Columbia to go online again? No. However, we didn't expect that last March. I think there are great precautions that are in place. The university did really well. So to give you an idea of what the residence halls have looked like, and Haley can join in as well in case I miss something. All students needed to test twice a week, go and get a PCR test. As you've received communication, those with vaccines were able to exempt out of that testing. That first date was June 18th. The second one, please upload your cards, is August 2nd, I believe. So that was yesterday. So even if you haven't uploaded and you miss that date, still upload your cards, because otherwise, it's going to just keep pushing it out, i.e. meaning that you're going to have to upload them at some point. So let's get it done sooner. We also tested the wastewater in the building 3 times a week. And so if we got notice that there was COVID in the wastewater, then the whole building received an email and they were asked to go get tested again over in Lerner Hall. So it was a pretty easy walk across campus. Our numbers stayed really low throughout the year. We do have a building on campus that if someone comes down with COVID or in their close contact quarantine, based on if they're able to isolate themselves and so much, and we move them over, and that's going to be in a building that's on 113th. And so we help expedite that move as soon as that positive COVID test comes back. And so we try not to have that individual in a community. Meals are delivered. If somebody does have COVID into isolation, mail can be delivered to the building, but we really try to be fluid with that. This fall, and we expect that again, as everybody's vaccinated and so forth, right now we still need to have masks on in the building. Depending on your building, it's 1 to 2 people in elevators. We expect that again will expand as more people are vaccinated on campus. But I think it's also important for us to realize that we do have members of the community that might not be able to vaccinate for medical reasons. We also do have some family who live in the community in the residence halls where family members aren't vaccinated. So we're just asking people to continue to be safe, smart, and responsible, that if you're not feeling well, making sure you're going to John Jay Dining Hall. Food initially in the residence halls, we're not gonna be able to sit down. I typically host a pasta family dinner a couple times in the fall. We're not gonna be able to do those right away because things will still be up until at least September 8th, grab and go. And so we take direction. This is really important to realize, that this isn't Columbia College or the School of Engineering sitting and taking choice of this is what we're going to do. This is a university-wide task force, and John actually has been involved with some of that, so John can comment there. but those times, sometimes when you all as students are getting information, we're getting it at the same time. And then again, that's because it's up, down. But I do think that we just all need to be patient, fluid, and agile, adapting to what's going on and where we're at. John, I don't know if you want to add anything else to that, but I think what I covered was encompassing a number of those questions.
Yeah, I think you hit all the good parts, and yeah, I mean, like you said, never say never. Who knows? Because things may get more complicated or less complicated. But you know, the university, you know, there are multiple layers of things that come down because the state makes certain decisions, the city makes certain decisions, and then the university has a task force that is comprised of medical professionals, lawyers, faculty, and students that basically try to make a university policy that is consistent with all the other constraints. But you know, all indications are that things will be close to normal in September because of our high vaccination rate. But you know, you will have no lack of email with guidance, especially if things do change. And you know, for example, it is not impossible. Like right now, because we have the vaccine mandate, we are permitted under New York guidance to say no masks are needed for class. But it may make sense to have masks required, and that decision really, I think, won't be made until right before classes start. And you know, like Scott said, as long as we're flexible, you know, we'll have I think the maximum opportunities that we have. You know, outdoor events, I think, are very likely to continue. Indoor events, they have to wait, as an example.
Yep. One of the questions and for the group that was asked is, where can you track COVID statistics on campus? And so Allison Jackson, who is helping moderate on the back of the house, so I'm going to ask if Allison could find the web link where the university, I believe it was on the health page, where we post the number of tests that we've been given out. We publish the number of positives out there, and I think for context, it was incredibly low when, you know, most of the nation was over 2%. We were down around like 0.6, so we never went above 1. And I'm looking at John and Haley to correct me if we were. I think we were actually even lower than 0.6 most of the time, but those are readily available on the university website. And if Allison's able to find it, we'll drop it into the chat feature. So there it is for you, for those who are looking for it. I do want to pivot a little bit, and that doesn't mean that we're not going to come back to some of these questions here, but again, we're talking about buckets we wanted to cover, so you have a breadth of what's going on. So we covered new student orientation program in the kind of first week of classes. We've started to talk a little bit about life in the residence halls, and so we'll continue that. Let's flush that out, and then we're going to jump on to how to become kind of involved on campus, and we've alluded that, but we'll get more laser focused there, and then we'll wrap up with kind of tackling that stress culture. The question that I would like to lead off with, and I think this is really great for Haley, and then William, if you want to provide your perspective, you know, what is a resident advisor? We've mentioned that a couple different times. What do they do? What is their role? And how, I think this wasn't asked explicitly, but how do they help build community, right? And so if you could comment on that, maybe starting with Haley and going from there.
Awesome. Yes. So a resident advisor is a student staff member hired by Residential Life. They are in the halls. There's typically one on every floor, and they are kind of the front runner of the floor. They are your biggest support system on the floor. They are the person you can go to ask your questions, who plan events for you. You know, if you need any resource on campus, they can direct you to said resource. They really are just, they're going to be your first point of contact if you need any support or advice at all. William, do you want to add maybe a student perspective to that?
Yeah, for sure. I think, yeah, I've been an RA for about a year now. And I think one of the things that I really took to heart on taking on the role was that RAs, you know, are responsible for creating a sense of community, not just on the floor where we're assigned, but within the residence hall. You know, some of the things we do, we hold floor meetings typically to give our residents info, to address concerns that might have come up during the year. We hold programs or floor events that are supposed to promote floor bonding, and help ease in residents, especially in the beginning of the year when people might not know one another. I think throughout the year, our role evolves to one not just focused on creating a community, but fostering it through events or just getting to know our residents one-on-one. On the more administrative side, we are responsible for handling any incidents that arise within residence halls, upholding policies found within the Guide to Living, the RA manual. Yeah, I mean, that's just a way for us to help maintain both the well-being and safety of all of the residents here on campus, especially with COVID in the back of our minds. Yeah.
One of the things that I think is really important to us as Res Life, and I want to highlight this because as someone who oversees all first year students in the residence halls, we ask RAs go out and hold connect conversations. We ask them to meet with you for a half hour in the first 6 weeks of school. We expect to be doing that again this fall. It's an opportunity for them to get to know you. Where are you from? What's important to you? Are you feeling connected on campus? We want you to have a community. That doesn't necessarily need to be where you live. We hope that's the case, but we want you to be able to articulate where on campus you feel nurtured, supported, an opportunity to be your authentic self. And so we ask those RAs to do that. And so RAs will be in contact with you. And my commitment to you is when we launch that, if you're not hearing from your RAs, like you have my name, email me. And that doesn't mean that we go back and have a tough conversation with RAs, but we ask what's going on and we try to support them in getting that done. And so I would encourage you to please look for that. The role of the RA first and foremost is community builder. William talked about kind of supporting and enforcing policy. What policies you might be sitting there wondering. And so there is the Guide to Living. The Guide to Living are the university within housing. It's the policies and procedures that you need to know, you want to know in order to be a good member of the community. And I think you'll hear us say over and over, if students are smart, safe, and responsible, it just makes the RA's job that much better. We want them to build community, but they are there to support and enforce policy if they need to. So folks, feel free to start dropping some questions in if you have concerns about being in the, or not concerns, but questions in the residence hall. And so one of the questions that came in, Haley, I'd love to toss to you if I could, is really, how do I go about making friends if I live in a single, and then, you know, what if my roommate and I don't share the same opinions around precautions around COVID? Like how do I approach that?
Absolutely. Those are two separate questions, so I'm going to answer them separately. So first and foremost, if you live in a single room, something to note is a lot of our first years on campus have the privilege of having a single room. And while that's really exciting for you to, be able to determine when you're going to go to sleep and when, you need your alone time and you want to be out of your room and don't need alone time, it can cause isolation if you don't ever leave your room, right? So that's really what we want to avoid. Something that I think I have seen, and William can certainly speak on this as a past RA and John Jay, is that our students in single room halls primarily are never in their room. They're typically in their room to study by themselves at times and to sleep. And that's really it. The floor lounges, the main building lounges, those are really the spaces that our students are utilizing the most. I think our students kind of like having that separation. So really making sure that even if you maybe want your alone time, but kind of want to put your foot out there, maybe just leaving your door open for a little bit and people walking by can say hello. There are several different ways for you to maintain, your own space while also being able to meet new people. Do you want to speak more on that, William?
Yeah, I certainly can. I think, what you were saying earlier about just leaving your door open, I think that works wonders. People are constantly going through the halls, and just I think that's a really great way to meet a lot of people, especially in the first couple of weeks of the year. I also think, what Catherine was also saying earlier about just being open to everyone, all the different kinds of people you'll meet and you'll interact with. Every floor has a lounge that I remember, people would often hang out or do homework in, and you can meet a lot of people on your floor that way. So just spending time, being intentional with your time, always works out. I think that certainly applies here.
Absolutely. And if you're someone who maybe doesn't want to approach a group, you can always just hang out in the lounge and people will walk in. So definitely just like use that as a crutch, at least for at the beginning. And for the second question Scott brought up in terms of, roommates not having the same ideals behind COVID safety and precaution, that is going to be a crucial conversation that all roommates and suitemates have. So here in residential life, we have something called a roommate contract that every group of roommates is given. Every pair of roommates is given by their RA, and typically they are to fill it out with their RA present and really walk through those difficult conversations and questions that you may not think you need to talk about, but suddenly someone has eaten someone's yogurt 8 months down the road and it's the final straw. So you really need to have these conversations at the beginning. And I know the yogurt is a joke, but COVID is not a joke. And so we want to make sure that we are covering all of those aspects at the beginning, because at the end of the day, you're both living in the space and you need to respect one another's, comfort levels. So your RA will definitely talk with you more about that down the road.
Thank you both. One of the things I would add is, I'm not necessarily the most extroverted person, but if I was headed down to John Jay Dining Hall, and not everybody goes to John Jay Dining Hall at once. It can seem like it because it's such, so many students have a meal plan, but knock on a couple doors as you're headed to the elevator and just be like, hey, I'm Scott, you're Catherine, right? Hey, I'm going down to John Jay. Do you want to grab a meal? I would do that and engage that as just a regular member of the community. Those frequent, ongoing, repetitive pieces, Catherine might say no 5 times, but that 6th time that you knock on Catherine and Williams and John's and Haley's door and says, hey, do you want to go down together? I'm headed there. That 6th time, you know what? They might say yes. It might have taken those 6 times for them to just get comfortable enough to say yes. It wasn't that they were saying no because of you. It just might be how they engage in a community and where they build their comfort level. So I think that's a really cool piece. If you're someone who's heading off to explore Central Park or Riverside Park, and you're going with a couple of friends and you don't care who joins you, again, knock on those doors and be like, hey, my 3 friends and I are going. Would you like to go? Try to expand those pieces and starting that from day one with that. So that would be a piece that I would particularly add. Haley, someone chimed in and said, so this is for you. What does a residence hall director do? And then conversely, John, this one would be for you, is like, what does a faculty in residence do? Do you live in the buildings? What is your roles?
Absolutely. So a residence hall director is a full-time professional staff member that lives in the community. So when I oversaw John Jay, I lived in John Jay with my residents. We are typically master's level professional staff that have a master's degree in whether it's counseling, higher education, social work, whatever that may be. So our roles outside of supervising the RAs, the resident advisors, is really the day-to-day of the building, ensuring that wellness is taken care of, and there's programmatic aspects in your building, just making sure that everyone is feeling connected and is continuing to foster a sense of community within the building. So whether that is, there's a roommate conflict, whatever that may be, while your RA may be the one to help you with that, your hall director is there if further steps need to be taken. So we really are just an additional greater support outside of your resident advisor. And the resident advisors kind of keep us in the know with what's going on each floor. I know for me personally, I walked my halls every week, and that's really how I got to know my students that were always in the lounges. It's really just to have that extra additional support around, because though it may not seem like it right now, you will likely need it at some point. And that's what we're here for.
Great. And I'll say the faculty and residents, similar. I mean, part of our job is to help with programming and, to think of things that are, a little more challenging for students to organize or for the RAs. And so, for example, a lot of the programming that we try to do is to bring in folks from the community or from other parts of the campus. So we have, I don't know what the word is, but certain convening power, as it were, so we'll bring in folks from outside. artists or professionals, et cetera, talk about their jobs. And then that's also an excuse to, learn, of course, from them as an example, but also for students to meet each other and the students with similar interests. And to try to organize those. And also we provide support for RA programs. So RAs will often invite us to their things. And so we have 4 children, for example. And if there's a cooking competition and they need judges, great. Who better than our children to, be objective, enthusiastic judges, so things like that. The other thing, though, just to speak to Haley's, is the RAs are also an important resource and the residence life with the other campus resources. And of course, we can provide that connection as well. But a lot of times students just aren't sure where to go. So for example, you're sick, you can't take a test the next day. Who do you call? What is the number? Your RA knows. And that's just a really reassuring resource to connect you with. The RA is not the one who's going to call your professor, but they know who will. And and that's something that it's great to have in-house and available 24 hours a day.
Great. There was a couple of questions that I can answer that came in around what will the Living Learning Center, so the LLC, Living Learning Center, look like this coming year for first-year students. For folks that don't know, it's really, let me give a little bit of background. The Living Learning Center in a typical year is the only building on campus that includes first year, sophomore, junior, and senior students. All sophomore, juniors, and seniors apply to live there. The reason that we're not running the LLC this coming year, the Living Learning Center this coming year, is because one, there weren't students living there really in any large quantity. The Living Learning Center did not exist in its current or in its typical fashion during this year. So it became really difficult to say to sophomores and even juniors, actually, hey, we want you to apply to this program that you haven't been a part of. That's why we took away that name. What it will look like is going to be very similar to a typical year because we're going to be rebuilding, rebranding it. That means that there will be upper class students there. They're being placed there as we need to fill bed space versus applying to live there. All of the programming that we do is for both buildings simultaneously. So if you live in Hartley, you're going to hear about programming in Wallach and vice versa. We have RAs who will be doing programs to both. It's great that if you're a first-year student, and I use the example when I first moved to New York in 2005, I really like horchata. I was like, where can I get this in the city? And there was somebody who I met who was a student actually, who was like, oh, there is Taqueria Fonda on Amsterdam Avenue between 107th and 108th. They have a really great horchata, go there. Conversely, you heard William talk about Galati for economics. So if you're not a morning person, but you need to sign up for a morning class, that mentoring relationship you can build, the person might say, take this professor, they're really dynamic at 8 in the morning, you'll stay awake with them. We'll still be doing faculty programs, we'll be doing alumni programs. And the way that we work those is we promote them for the Living Learning Center first for 24 hours, and then we blast them out to all first-year students and we cap those. And so, and there are other pieces to the Living Learning Center, but that kind of gives you a framework. Joe Barrett has been the RHD of the Living Learning Center for 2 years. And so he is set and ready to go to build that community from day one. So if you're assigned to either one of those buildings, you're going to have an exciting year. And then going into your sophomore year, you can apply to live into that space. I want to be conscientious of time on this because there's some really great questions coming in here and I want to triage them. We already started talking about getting involved on campus, and that's kind of the next bucket. So we'll have covered new student orientation already. We've covered kind of residence life or life in the residence halls, and kind of circling back to how to get involved on campus. Catherine, this question I'd love to toss to you, but two-part. One is, I've heard that most clubs require a tryout. Is that true? And what do I do if I don't get into clubs that require tryouts or some type of case study or something like that? So again, do most clubs require a tryout? And if I don't get in, what do I do?
Sure, yeah, that's kind of a big question. So if other people want to jump in and answer, please feel free. So I would say that there are dozens of clubs and organizations on campus, and some require an application or tryout and many don't. There are some organizations like I think typically performing arts groups and certain pre-professional societies that have an audition or basic qualifications that you need to meet in order to enter into them. But there are definitely organizations that don't have that, and I would probably argue the majority don't. Many organizations have general body groups, which is a non-elected position, and many students can gather and participate in a club as a general body member without having to apply or anything like that. And often being an active member of a general body can lead to leadership positions down the line. So they're definitely worth joining, especially in your freshman year. I would also say that in terms of rejections, I think a lot of the stress that can be felt around clubs stems from the fact that many people see clubs as a way to build their resume or get experience that can lead to other positions or job opportunities. And that can lead to some competitiveness to be accepted into certain clubs that people deem to be better for that purpose. But what I've found in my experience is that, joining a specific club is not worth the resume line. It's, an impact that you have within any type of organization that you're involved in. And I would look at that rejection as an opportunity to be a part of an organization that takes you for who you are and really look to make an impact within that organization. That will matter way more on any resume or application. I would also say that, individuals who do best in clubs are individuals who join clubs that they're passionate about, not ones that they think will get them more prestige or more street cred or whatever. So I give you full permission to not care about prestige, and we all can get too caught up in that. And I would highly encourage you to join clubs that you're passionate about and look to make a difference within those. So don't apply. If anyone else wants to chime in, please feel free.
If I could speak a tiny bit about this, the one thing is there are hundreds of clubs, not just dozens of clubs, and don't overthink it. I mean, I meet students sometimes who are just like exhausted. It's like, what's happening? Like, yeah, I'm in 7 clubs and blah blah blah. And it's like, really? Like, I mean, you can be in 7 clubs, but like, you also need to live the rest of your life. And so I totally agree with Catherine's thing, which is to say, look, join the clubs you're excited about. It's a great way to meet those people. And yeah, this whole thing about applying for clubs, I understand like for a string quartet, where if you're terrible, yeah, you're not one of the 4. But the reality is for most clubs, they're happy to have engaged people, and a lot of the sort of trial period is really more to feel out, like, are you going to be engaged? Because there is a certain activation energy for you to participate. And so, don't overdo it. I mean, definitely feel things out, but don't overdo it. You do have to balance your academics, your social life, your clubs. The clubs may be your social life, it may not. All good. The other thing that I'll just say very briefly is a lot of the stuff on campus, people ask a great question, which is how do you meet people? And go to events, go to things. Honestly, a lot of them are going to be super rinky-dink. And even if an event is terrible, honestly, you'll get to bond with the other people there. And sometimes that's the best way. So, yes, your friend might have a concert and your friend may be terrible or whatever. It doesn't matter, right? Like, you're there. It's part of the fun, and don't overthink it. If you need to go to a, world-class opera, we have that in New York. That's fine. So don't overthink it. Like, just be part of the fun and be supportive of your friends, be supportive of your community and your groups. And that's a great way to get into that. But so clubs are good, but don't overdo it. Because also your residence hall, I'd say getting involved, for example, in the leadership, that's kind of like a club too. It's going to take some time. It's a great way to meet people, Anyway. Okay, that's my thought.
Thanks, John.
I will just add quickly, that was a great segue, John. If you want to be involved in a leadership role and you still want that residential experience and getting to know the people on your floor, Hall Council is a great way to get involved. You get a very great size budget to plan events for your building. I know William was a part of Hall Council Catherine can speak on behalf of it. It's a great, easy way to get involved, and there's no rigid application process.
Yeah, and I'll say one other thing, but not to speak too much. So I'm on the board of like a society, a professional society, which has a $9 million a year budget. I'm the treasurer this year. Now, I was the treasurer also for my dorm when I was in college. And let me tell you, same fights that we had in college, we have in this society. So I learned a lot. It was great. It was, again, it seemed all rinky dink when I was in college, but now it's like, okay, I know exactly who to talk to.
Thanks, John. To me, a lot of this comes down, right? I've been here a while and doing this with Columbia students. It comes down to really stress relief, right? To me, these questions come about, how do I get involved? How do I have a sense of belonging? Where do I fit in? Where can I step away from something and where can I step forward? And I say this unabashedly, I am really at the other end of the spectrum. Other than being involved like with one club, I would encourage you to take the basic bare minimum credits that you can take to get across the stage in 4 years. Don't overdo it. Don't worry about 2 majors and 2 minors. Nobody cares for graduate school. And that's easy for me to say, right? It's easy. I'm not an undergrad. Don't do the clubs. Spend your first semester. And again, 17 years at Columbia now, I've never had a student say, I wish I had joined more clubs. I wish I had taken more classes. What they typically come back and say is, I wish I had stopped and had a cup of coffee or tea or water and talked to someone on the urban beach. I would tell you not to sign up for clubs. I would tell you to take the bare minimum classes your first semester. Get to know your professors. There are going to be so many alumni events to go to that go to an alumni who have been here, build that connection. They're here in the city, offer to take them for a cup of coffee. I've never, ever met an alum who isn't willing to meet with you. It might take them 3 months to get with you, and they're never going to let you buy them a cup of coffee. And you don't need anything. As a first-year student, build that relationship and keep it for 4 years. That is the amazing thing. And that would be my advice versus kind of encouragement. Like, I'm really unabashed in saying that. I would step back from all of that and then roll it out slowly. Use this as a transitional piece. And again, this comes back to reducing stress. There's a comment that popped up, and I want to, William, if I could toss it to you, do you have other strategies that you suggest to students to relieve that stress, to combat kind of some of that reality that we hear around stress culture? Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, certainly. I think definitely the first step is to reach out to the people around you, whether that's friends you made, RAs like me. I think if your stress comes from a class you're taking, reaching out to the professor, to TAs, teaching assistants, or just speaking to any friends you've made in the class often helps as well. I think everyone here experiences stress, and you're definitely not alone. Taking like the time to decompress or relax a little bit during the year is also important. I think working on assignments or taking classes all the time isn't the healthiest thing to do, both physically and mentally. So going for walks, exploring New York City, or just getting rest, like sleeping, are things that I would recommend.
Great, thank you. We have 1 minute left. And this isn't the end all be all, right? You're going to continue to learn stuff. I asked you all, and I put it in the chat. It's about 3 or 4 up that I sent everyone out to, but I included public safety's numbers, the non-emergency number and the emergency number, because again, we want you to feel a sense of belonging. We want you to feel safe on campus. And as a student, these are 2 really paramount numbers that you want to have. That means that if you're walking down Broadway and somebody is making you feel uncomfortable, give a call. Step into any one of the stores and say, hey, could you call over to public safety? There's these little lions that Ricky Morales, who's with public safety, lets us know about. That is stores that have been trained to call public safety, right? If your friend is drank too much and they're hurting, if you're just missing home, give a call. Public safety can, as John said early on, can call into Res Life. We can show up and support you. And that's really critical for us, right? Don't keep anything just to yourself. Please put those numbers in. We are at 2 o'clock, and so that is a hard cutoff that we want to adhere to. What I would say is if you have any questions, please reach out. My email address, and I'm going to ask if Allison could just type it in, but it's sh2409 at columbia.edu, sh2409 at columbia.edu. If you email me, right, throw a telephone number in there. If it's a US domestic number, I'll call you, we'll chit chat. If it's international, I'll send you a group meeting. And if I'm not the right one, I will triage that out to the one of us, and we're happy to support you over the coming weeks. So thank you very much. I do want to turn to the co-panelists and thank them for this time. We hope that you all have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.